Clearly, I'm excited about this show because I've lost my voice. So this is gonna be a great day. We are getting ready for Thanksgiving this week, and today I am gonna show you how to make a delicious dessert, midday snack, or heck, it even works as a sweet little breakfast pick-me-up. I'm very excited about it because we're making my pumpkin streusel loaf. Yeah, it's gonna be really good. Listen, I love a loaf cake. I like what I call like a tea cake because it's understated. You can have a little sliver here, a little sliver there. Not those big grand wedding cakes. Get those out of here. I just want a loaf. I love a loaf. Okay, so the first thing I want to do to get started on this recipe is get to work on that streusel layer. Now, a streusel layer is that kind of crumbly situation that runs through a coffee cake. It's so good. It adds a little bit of texture, and I absolutely love it. So I've got a small bowl here. I'm just gonna add all my ingredients in there and give it a mix up. This is super simple to do. The first thing I need is half a cup of brown sugar. Brown sugar is great. It gives you a really nice molassesy flavor. If you were to use white sugar, this would go a little bit crispier than anything, which is not what we're looking for. So go in with half a cup of brown sugar. Then we're gonna add in a quarter cup of all-purpose flour. That's gonna kind of dry it out and give you those little like chunky crumbles, which I absolutely love. So go in with a quarter cup of that. Now into there, we're gonna start seasoning this. This is where we get very like pumpkin spice. I'm pumped about it, and yes, that was a pun, so I'm so sorry. We'll try to hold those in today, because I love a pumpkin pun so much. So the first thing I need is half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Cinnamon is a classic. It's so warming and totally delicious. It is something that I bust out so much at this time of year. Now I'm going in also with a half a teaspoon of ginger. Ground ginger is really nice. It's not as spicy as fresh ginger. It's got a really nice kind of heat to it though. It's so, oh my gosh, it's so good. I love it. It smells like a ginger molasses cookie. You know what I mean? Ugh, best ever. So add that on in. Then I'm gonna go in with a half a teaspoon-ish. Actually, no, I'm lying. I'm doing too many spices. Do a quarter teaspoon, but I'm going extra spicy today, so I'm doing half a teaspoon. So the recipe online is gonna say a quarter teaspoon, but I'm doing half a teaspoon. So I'm going in with a half a teaspoon of nutmeg, my very favorite spice. Now, I gotta get my nutmeg out of my pocket. If you don't keep your nutmeg in your pocket, you should keep it in your purse, because you never know. This is getting into like eggnog season, and you never know when there's gonna be an eggnog emergency, so have it handy. So go in with about a half a teaspoon or a quarter teaspoon if you wanna follow the actual recipe, or fly by the seat of your pants like I'm doing today. Beautiful. Now, fresh nutmeg is so nice. It's really nice and lemony. It's got beautiful flavor in there, so that's looking great. Now, I'm gonna go in, this is the only measurement you have to listen to with this streusel. I'm going in with 1/8 of a teaspoon of cloves. Cloves are so good, but they are strong and punchy. They're this really dark one that's hanging out in your pantry. If you've ever made pumpkin pie before, you know cloves. Really nice. Also, if you've ever made like a really old school ham, sometimes you stick like them into the ham, the whole cloves. Kind of weird, you don't want to crunch down on one of those. No. But ground up, just about 1/8 of a teaspoon or a pinch is absolutely perfect. And I'm just gonna give that a little bit of a mix up with a fork. Now, for a little bit of added crunch in here, I'm going in with half a cup of chopped up pecans. I love a pecan. Right? I think it's like the peak nut. It's so good. If you are someone though who's more partial to a walnut, feel free to use a walnut. Honestly, those are the two nuts I would put in here. I feel like with pumpkin, pecans and walnuts are just classics and they go so beautifully. All right, now into there I need to add in my favorite ingredient, and that is butter. So I'm going in with 4 tablespoons of melted butter. If you wanted to, earlier this week I made browned butter, so you could brown the butter if you wanted to. So give that a mix up. And you just want it to look kind of crumbly and kind of like the dog's breakfast. That is what you want your streusel to look like. Honestly, that looks absolutely perfect. If it's a little wet, feel free to add a bit more flour to give you a bit more crumble, but that's looking great to me. Now I'm gonna move on to the batter for this loaf. So in a large bowl, I wanna get to work on my wet ingredients. So funnily enough, sugar is actually considered a wet ingredient. I know it looks like a dry and you keep it in your pantry, but it's actually considered a wet ingredient in most baking recipes. So I'm going in with 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. Again, I love brown sugar. If you don't have any on hand, you can sub out brown sugar with white sugar with a little bit of molasses in it, because essentially that's all brown sugar is. So that molasses flavor gives you a little bit of kind of like grandpa sugar, like a little bit of like deep, beautiful sweetness in there. Grandpa sugar, makes sense, right? I'm on board. Now into there, I'm also gonna go in with half a cup of melted butter. Again, if you wanted to, you could brown this. I'm using melted butter. Oh yeah, guys, we're making a loaf. You gotta have a lot of butter in there. Now, If you wanted to, you could do this with room temperature butter and whip it up, kind of like creaming, something like a normal cake or like a cookie. And if you did that, you'd get a lighter loaf. But I like a dense, really rich loaf. So by melting it, it gives you a really nice kind of like sturdy consistency, which I absolutely love. So just get that mixed together. You can beat it up until it's a little light and fluffy if you want, but if you don't, it's not gonna be the end of the world. Now I'm gonna go in with 2 eggs. Just crack them right on in. Typically, I beat the eggs in one at a time, but honestly, with 2 eggs, you're not looking at too much kind of incorporation. So you can go in both at the same time. The reason why you often want to add them one at a time is because eggs are mostly water, and obviously there's a lot of butter in here, and butter and water don't like getting along. So just to emulsify it all in, one at a time is a good thing, but 2 eggs is not too much. So just give it a bit of a beat. Beautiful. Now flavor that up with a little bit of vanilla extract, which goes in pretty much every single baked good. You don't really taste the vanilla, but it just makes everything else taste so much better. So about a teaspoon of that goes in. Now I'm gonna go in with about half a cup of milk. That's gonna just loosen everything and make a really nice consistency. That's gonna go right on in. And then I have promised you pumpkin loaf, not pumpkin spice loaf. You know when you get a pumpkin spice latte and you're like, there's no pumpkin in here, which honestly, good, I don't want pumpkin in my coffee. But we're gonna add in a cup of canned pumpkin. That pureed pumpkin, not pumpkin pie filling, because that already has sugar and everything in it. This is the one, it comes in a bigger can typically. Pure pumpkin is what you're looking for. So you need about a cup of that. Right on in. This is gonna give you almost a banana bready texture because it's giving you a ton of moisture, a ton of richness. So just give that a mix together, just to combine. This is like the sloppy part of making a loaf. Whoa, really sloppy. Y'all, I'm sorry, I'll clean up, don't worry. All right, now into that I'm gonna add in my dry ingredients. So over here, I've got those dry ingredients all measured out. I've got 1 3/4 of a cup of flour, and into there I've got 3/4 of a teaspoon each of baking soda and baking powder. That's gonna give a good amount of lift because this is a dense loaf, so you need that to just lift it up. I've also got some handy dandy spices that we saw before. I've got that nutmeg, I got some cinnamon, some ginger, and that little bit of clove, as well as a little bit of salt in there, just to kind of balance everything out. The reason I love adding spices in here, other than just for flavor, is you can actually see when you've actually mixed everything well. Because when you're mixing in things like baking soda and baking powder, you wanna make sure they're evenly distributed, because if they're not, you're gonna get one chunk that tastes kind of bitter and maybe like rises up like a weird bubble, and then another bit that's kind of flat and not what you want. So just get it nice and mixed. Now I'm gonna add all of those dry straight on into the wet. This is a super simple loaf to make. It's like, throw it together when people are coming over. It lasts really nicely as well because of that pumpkin in there. If you wanted to, you could stir some nuts through this, even some chocolate chunks would be absolutely amazing. Dark chocolate and pumpkin, honestly, made for each other. So give that a good mix together. You can already kind of feel the bubbles forming from that baking soda and baking powder. And as easy as that, you got a pumpkin loaf. So now we're gonna put this all together. So since I want that beautiful streusel layer running through the middle, I'm gonna add a little bit less than half of this batter into my prepared loaf pan. So I've got this greased with a little nonstick cooking spray, and then a little sling of parchment paper is gonna make it super easy to pull out. So pop that in right along the bottom. Then you're gonna get that beautiful streusel layer and just kind of like crumble it in on top. I go with a little less on the bottom because that baking soda and baking powder is actually gonna push some of this streusel layer up. So it's gonna make it actually be more in the middle. Now go in with the rest of that batter, looking beautiful. You can tell this is pumpkin loaf. This is not one that you're gonna question. If anybody thinks this is banana loaf, where are you buying your bananas? Know what I mean? All right, spread that out. And then on top with the rest of that beautiful streusel. I get those words mixed up all the time. Strudel's an apple thing. That's another recipe. All right, add that right on in. And then you wanna bake this off in a 350 oven on the middle rack for a good long time. This takes about 45 minutes to 50 minutes to bake because it is a dense cake. Look at this little baby. Isn't she just the cutest thing you've ever seen? Honestly, that baking soda and baking powder did the Lord's work, rose it up. It's gonna be fluffy, it's gonna be dense, it's gonna be rich. I am so, so excited about that. So I'm just setting it aside to cool. Now, while that's cooling, you could stop there. You could have a slice right now, make a cup of tea. Oh, have a pumpkin spice latte with that? Oh my gosh, get out of here. That's a lot of pumpkin, I'm into that. But I'm gonna make a delicious glaze to go over top because you just can't stop me. I just am gonna do it. So I'm gonna make a really nice kind of cream cheesy glaze because I love the flavors of pumpkin and cream cheese together. Pumpkin's so rich and sweet and kind of savory, and that cream cheese just has that lightness to it. So it almost makes it so you want another bite, you know what I mean? All right, so I'm gonna go into my bowl with about half a cup of cream cheese. Now I'm using brick style cream cheese, the one you get in the little kind of rectangle guy. It has less binders in it, so it stays a little bit thicker when you mix it. If you were to use tub style cream cheese, it tends to thin out a little bit too much, and I don't want that. I want to be able to control the consistency of this glaze. So add that on in. That's also a good tip. If you've ever made cream cheese frosting before and it gets thin and soupy, make sure you're using brick style for one, and also don't beat it too much. Cream cheese is weird. The more you beat it, the more it gets loose. Like it kind of loses its structure. So beat it less, you'll get a nicer cream cheese frosting. Now, into there, I'm also going in with a quarter cup of butter, because again, you can't stop me, so I'm going in. If you wanted to, you could leave it out, but it does give a really nice consistency. It makes it a little bit smoother and also just kind of balances out that cream cheese nicely. So I'm just gonna beat this up. I am gonna use a hand mixer here. You don't have to if you wanna work out, but I'm not feeling that today. This makes quick work, and you wanna make sure both your cream cheese and your butter are at room temperature. That way they're gonna mix together really, really nicely. All right, perfect, that's looking great. Now into there, I'm gonna start flavoring this. If you wanted to, you could add in some more of those spices if you really wanted to like kick it into high gear, but I'm just going in with a little bit of vanilla. So pop that right on in. Give that a little bit of a mix to combine. And then we're gonna add in our icing sugar. Now, since this is a glaze, I'm only going in with about a cup, maybe a cup and a half of icing sugar. So I'm gonna add that in straight into the bowl. And if you've ever made anything with icing sugar before, you know it ends up everywhere. So you wanna go slow. Don't put it all in at once. I might do it just for fun and see what happens, you know? I've already started making a mess, but I'm gonna start with a cup, see how we're doing. Start on low. That is the one thing you wanna do. But my favorite part of working with icing sugar is when it does flow everywhere, is like the air kind of tastes sweet. You can like eat it, it's good, it's really tasty. Honestly, do that with your kids and they're gonna be like, what is happening? It's amazing. So you just wanna beat that together until it comes into a really nice consistency. If you need to, obviously you can add that other half cup of that icing sugar, but honestly, this is looking really good to me. I actually like my glazes a little less on the sweet side. Again, that's why I use that cream cheese in there. Right now, to me though, this looks more like a frosting, which honestly, delicious. Feel free to slap that right over there. Oh my gosh, beautiful. But if you wanna turn this into that glaze, just add in about a tablespoon or two of milk. Milk, cream, anything like that is perfect. That's just gonna thin it out a little bit and make it nice and pourable. So whip that together. Let's see what's happening. Oh yeah. There you go. See, it's getting a little sloppy. That's what I'm looking for. I like that little bit of that kind of like glossy consistency that kind of almost falls right off of there. Okay, perfect. That's looking beautiful. Very excited. So now we're just going to turn that cake out of that pan. So, spoiler alert, this has actually been out of the oven for longer than I just took it out. If you had just taken this out of the oven, it would be hot. So you'd actually want to leave it a little bit longer unless you're serving it without that glaze. The easiest way to get this out though, again, with that sling, all you need to do, grab both sides, give it a little bit of a lift, and it comes right on out. You can leave that parchment underneath if you want to, but that's all you need to do. And now for that beautiful glaze, you just want to get some of that and just kind of drizzle it right over top. I'm gonna do kind of like a back and forth. You could even spread it if you wanted to, but honestly, this looks like a total, this is gonna get messy. Yeah. You want it to just glaze down the sides. Honestly, I'm really pumped about this. Obviously, I'm gonna have this slice because it has the most glaze on it. Just cut right into that loaf. Looking beautiful. You see that little line of streusel running through the middle right there, looking beautiful. And then that little crumbly bit on the top. Let's give this a taste. You can tell if this is a pumpkin loaf, and I'm very excited about it. Oh my gosh. Showstopper, no matter the time of day. Hey, Mary here. What did you think? Drop your comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more of the good stuff.